you the process. All right, so I'm going to get you guys turned around and we're going to go ahead and get started. All right, let's do this. So I'm going to show you guys the sample here, and then we're going to jump right in. So we are putting together these really, really beautiful sparkly earrings for the holidays. However, I think you could do these in any color that you wanted to for any time of the year. And even though these are really long shoulder duster style earrings, you can make these shorter if you want to, by a lot, actually. So feel free to take whatever you learn here and apply it in as many different ways in your own jewelry making as you possibly can. And as I mentioned, we're going to really practice those wrapped loops because you can see there are a lot of those here. And we're going to be using a combination of both head pins and wire. So I'm going to be using some 24 gauge German style wire, which is my favorite. And then I'm also using some 24 gauge ball head pins. So a combination of both. The wires are nice and small. It's not going to overpower the beauty of the beads that we're going to be using. And we are using these gorgeous red bicones. However, like I said, feel free to mix this up, mix up your colors. You could put these together in reds and greens and whites for Christmas. You could do blues and whites and silver for Hanukkah. You could do orange and green for Halloween, or anything in between, right? All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to start at the bottom of this earring and we're going to work our way up. All right, so the very first thing that we're going to do is we are going to take a piece of chain. You're only going to need about a 1/2 inch of chain for this project. Well, 2 pieces to make both earrings. I apologize for the snoring dog at my feet. I know a lot of you are pretty used to that by now. But if you hear that, I promise it's not me. I'm not snoring and talking at the same time. This is most definitely my dog. But you're going to be using about a 1/2 inch of chain. Now, feel free to use jump rings here to make your own little chain if you want to. But this is a great project to use up chain scraps. So if you've got, like, for me, I have a little jar where I just toss chain scraps. Feel free to grab some of those, or you can grab some of this Beadalon chain and use it up and save the rest of it. Let the rest of it be scraps, right? All right, and we're going to start out with a larger crystal than the rest of these. So the biggest crystal is going to go on the bottom, but they can all be the same if you want them to be. We're going to start out by creating a wrapped loop on a head pin. So we're going to drop that larger crystal out of all of them down onto one of the head pins, and we're going to start a wrapped loop. We're going to come in with our chain nose pliers. We're going to be grabbing that wire, and we're going to bend that over the top of the pliers. Now, when you do that and you take the pliers away, what that leaves behind is enough space for your wraps. So you don't have to come in and pre-measure. You don't have to use a ruler. You don't have to eyeball it. You let the tool do the work for you. So you bend the wire, then you're going to come in with your round nose pliers. And like I said, we're going to get lots of practice at these. So don't worry if you don't get it the first time. You're going to grab the wire so that it's running between the 2 barrels of the pliers. I'll notice how I'm holding these pliers so that there is a clear top barrel and a bottom barrel. And that bottom barrel is right next to the top of the bead. We're going to take that wire and we're going to go up and over that top barrel, just like so. And what we've created is a little hook. So we're going to hold that bead in our hands and we're going to rotate those pliers. So you don't even have to take the tool away. You're just going to take it from this position to this position. Now we've moved out of the way so that we can go ahead and take the wire over to the other side. But before we do any of those wire wraps in that space, we're going to take these off of the pliers and we're going to take our chain and we're going to thread one of those last links of chain, and we're going to thread that onto the wire, and we're just going to slide it right into the loop that we just created. Okay, then I'm going to take my bent chain nose pliers, just like so, and I'm going to wire wrap in that space that the pliers made for us. So between the loop that we just created and the top of our bead. All right, so now we have connected our bead to our chain with a wrapped loop, and there's no jump ring in there, right? It's just a straight connection. We're going to come in with our cutter tool and we're going to trim off the excess. And we have the bottom section of our earring ready to go. Now that's going to be the only piece of chain that you use in the entire piece. The rest of this going forward is either going to just be links of wire or your head pins. All right, so the next thing that we want to do is we want to create our center bead here, right? So I know we have two dangles here, but we're going to jump up to our center bead, get that one ready to go. We can actually go ahead and do our two wire wrapped beads and set those to the side, but moving upwards, we're going to be moving from the center and then building outwards. Okay, so let's go ahead and do two of those wrapped loops first, and then we'll grab a piece of wire for this guy right here. All right, so we're going to follow the same steps that we did when we did the dangle on the bottom, but this time we're not using any chain, so we don't have to stop what we're doing to do the wrapped loops. So we're going to come in with our wire, or with our head pin rather, and we're going to thread on one of our bicones, bend the wire over the top of the pliers, coming in with our round nose pliers, up and over, rotate, take the wire over to the other side, just like we did in the previous. But now instead of taking this on the tool, we're just going to leave it. We're going to switch hands and we're going to do the wire wrapping. Just like so. I could get about 4 wire wraps in there. Now, if I was using a thicker gauge wire, I would probably only be able to do about 3 wire wraps, but I can get 4 with this 24 gauge head pin. You want to be careful when you are doing wire wraps like that, particularly with a bicone, because the top of the crystal is very narrow, right? So at that narrow point, if you push too many wire wraps, you risk cracking the top of that bead. And when you come in with your cutter tool, you also risk accidentally chipping the top of the bead. So you always want to be really, really careful, particularly with bicones. They just seem to be a little bit easier than the rest of the bead shapes, whether they're made out of crystal or checked glass or whatever they're made out of. It's just because of the shape. So always be really mindful of that. And we're going to do another one. So we're coming in with our chain nose pliers, bending the wire, coming in with our round nose pliers, up and over, rotate, take the wire over to the other side, and then again, we're going to wire wrap in that space. She is snoring away at my feet. I am so sorry. And I've nudged her gently with my foot a couple of times, but she just continues to snore. So you would think she worked a double shift, and you know, she's just a very loud sleeper for a dog. All right, so there are our 2 bicones. Those are going to be these 2 right here. So we're moving upwards. Now for our center bicone, we're actually going to move away from the head pins and we're going to use an actual piece of wire. So I've got a piece of 24 gauge wire here. And again, I'm using the German style, which is a medium temper. It's just a little bit stiffer, has a little bit more structure to it than the dead soft wire. So it's my favorite when it's for wire wrapping, and just wraps loops in general, I feel like are much cleaner when I use the German style wire. But if you're not comfortable with it and you would rather use like an artistic wire, please feel free to do so. But we're going to create a wrapped loop on the top and the bottom here. So that's why we're not using a head pin, because we need to have a link on the top and the bottom of our next crystal. So we're going to create a wrapped loop on this wire. So we're going to come down on the wire about an inch, inch and a half, right? And we're going to bend the wire. Then we're going to come in with our round nose pliers. We're going to go up and over, rotate, take the wire over to the other side. Now, don't go any further. Take this off of the tool. We're going to connect a lot of things right here. So you can see this loop on the bottom of this crystal has our chain and 2 bicones. So before we do any of the wire wrapping here, we're going to take one of our bicones. We're going to thread that on, slip that right in. And then we're going to take the other end of our chain that doesn't have our bead on it, and we're going to slip that in. So that's going to be in the middle. And then we're going to take our other bicone and we're going to thread that one on as well. And you got to be sure about your order here, because depending on how you thread these on, you may not end up with your chain in the middle. So be sure that your chain is the second piece that you slide in to this. All right. Now, bent chain nose pliers are my favorite for holding on to these loops. So I'm going to hold on to the loop in between the tip of the bent chain nose pliers. And then I'm going to do about 3 wire wraps. You can use your other pliers to do these, or you can do these with your fingers. Totally up to you. Okay, then I'm going to come in with my cutter tool and I'm going to trim off. And then I'm going to slide a crystal down on the top. All right, now, one of the things about this project is the direction of your loops is going to be very, very important. So I'm going to sit this down for just a second. We're going to take a look at the sample. So you can see with the sample, we have made it to this point and everything should be facing, well, as far as your front loops facing you, the loop on the bottom bicone and the bottom loop on this middle bicone should be facing towards you. However, the next wrapped loop that we do on the top of this bead, it needs to be facing away from us. So I don't know if you can see. Let me point with my pliers instead. So there's this loop here and this loop here are facing towards us. But the loop that is on the top of this crystal with this same piece of wire here, all one piece of wire, that loop is going to be facing away from us, so that the next loop up will be front facing and we can add crystals to it. That's really important in order for this earring to hang correctly. So this is a really good lesson in not just wrapped loops, but also in the placement of all of your loops and which direction they're going to be facing, because it is project specific. And depending on what kind of look you're trying to achieve and where you want those beads to hang, it's really going to make a difference which direction all of those loops are going. So for the loop on the top of this, I'm holding it so that the loop is facing towards me. I'm going to grab it with the pliers just like so. Okay. Now I'm going to bend the wire in the opposite direction. So when you're taking a look at it this way, when I turn it sideways where I've bent the wire, the loop is now facing away from me. The wire is bent this direction. So we are going to create that loop going in the other way. So coming in again with my round nose pliers, I'm going up and over, rotate the pliers, take the wire over to the other side, and then we're going to wire wrap in that space. And I'm just kind of filling up that space. And then I'm going to come in with my cutter tool very carefully. Don't crack the top of that bead. And I'm going to trim off the excess. Okay. So when you're looking at this bead in particular, you'll notice that bottom loop is facing towards us, but the top loop is facing away from us. Okay. And we're going to do that each time we step up. Now, if you don't like a really long earring, this might be a good opportunity to put your ear wire on if you want to and call it done, but we're going to keep going. We're building up towards the top here. So we need to do wrapped loops on 2 more of the crystals that are going to be on the sides. Okay, so we're going to take a head pin, thread on one of the crystals, and we're going to do a wrapped loop. So again, practice on these wrapped loops, grabbing the wire, bend it over the top of the pliers, come in with your round nose pliers. We're going up and over, Rotate the pliers so that you have room to take that wire over to close up your loop. And then you're going to wire wrap in that space. Whoops. Okay. Then you're going to come in and cut with your cutter tool. Okay. And then we're going to repeat that with another. So another head pin. Drop down your crystal. Bend the wire. Okay. Round nose pliers coming in again. And for those of you who are beginners with your wire and with wire wrapped loops, always keep in mind that the placement of the wire with the pliers is what's going to determine the size of your loop. So for me, I like to keep my loops down here towards the bottom of the pliers. That makes them around a 3 millimeter loop, right? But the further back I take this on the tool, the larger the mandrel is of the round nose pliers, so the larger the loop is going to be. I try to plan ahead with a project depending on what kind of look I want. Sometimes I do want those larger loops, but for the most part, for a project like this, I don't want the loops to be the star of the show. They really are functional and not part of the design. So I will bring them down here and try to keep them in the same area, and I try to be as consistent as possible. That way they all are pretty close to the same size and there's no large discrepancies, because a lot of times that will kind of draw attention away from the design, and you'll notice like this one large loop. If it's off by just a little bit, don't worry about it too much, but you obviously don't want to do like 3 loops down here and then one all of a sudden back here. So just keep all that in mind as you are practicing these wrapped loops. All right, so up and over, and you have this kind of hook shape. Then you're going to rotate the pliers in your hand. So now we've taken that bottom barrel and made it the top barrel. That gives us the room to take the wire over to the other side. Right now we've closed up that loop and we're ready to wire wrap in that space. So I'm going to switch hands. I like to hold with my non-dominant hand and do the wrapping with my dominant hand. And just depending on how I'm feeling or what the wire and bead is, I'll either use pliers or I'll just use my fingers. I think with a project like this, either or is fine. So I've done my wraps. I'm going to come in with my cutter and I'm going to trim. All right, so now I have the next 2 dangles ready to go. We're ready to step up for our next bead in the center. That bead in the center is going to be on a piece of the 24 gauge wire. So again, take another piece of your 24 gauge wire. You're going to come down on that wire about 1.5 inches, an inch, something like that. You want to give yourself, plenty of room to do your wire wraps. You're going to bend the wire. Okay. You're going to come in with your round nose pliers. Now these steps are exactly the same, whether you were doing this with a head pin or your own cut piece of wire. The steps don't change. And again, I try to stay consistent in where my loops are placed on my round nose pliers. So up and over, rotate the pliers, take the wire over to the other side. The only difference is there's no bead here, right? But it's still exactly the same. I'm going to take this off of the tool because, again, we need to connect a lot of things here. So we're going to take the tip of this wire and we are going to thread on a bicone. We're going to slide that right into place. And then we are going to slide on the bicone from what we've already created. Okay, so that loop is going to slide right in there, and then our other bicone. And again, the order of this really matters, okay? So you always want that middle bead to be in the middle. Don't put your 2 bicones on and then decide to slide everything in on top of that, because it's not going to work. I've got everything kind of twisted here. Hold on. Whoops. And now I have dropped it. All right, let's try again. So you're just going to slide that in just like so. Okay, so now we have another front facing loop, just like the front facing loop here. All right, now, again, I like to use the bent chain nose pliers. They're perfect for holding everything in place. And I can also now at this point, everything's long enough that I can kind of cup it in my left hand. And then I can come over to do my wraps. Fingers or pliers, either one is fine. Okay, I'm gonna come in with my cutter tool, trim off the excess. Okay, now we're ready to slide on a bead. I do want to make sure that that wire where I cut it is not sticking out though. All right, we're going to thread on a bicone, drop that down. And you can see we are moving our way up. So everything is facing the direction that it needs to face. Everything's looking really good here. Okay. All right, so the next step here is to do a loop that is facing away from us because that bottom loop of this bead is facing towards us. So that means that the top loop of it needs to face away. So grabbing the bead, or I'm sorry, grabbing the wire where it is exiting the bead, we're going to give that a bend. Okay, now we're going to come in with our round nose pliers. We're going up and over. Rotate those pliers, take the wire over to the other side, and then you're going to wire wrap in that space. Okay. You're going to come in with your cutter and trim off. And when you trim, if you need to tuck the wire, my cutter is nice and sharp so I can get in there really close, but sometimes if your cutter is a little dull, it's kind of hard to get in there. Use your pliers to very gently squeeze that wire and it'll tuck that end in for you. All right, same steps. We're moving up one more time. All right. Now I've cheated this time. I've got two that are already ready. Okay. We're still going to do two of them together, but this next step up, just to save a little bit of time, these two have already been wire wrapped, but don't worry, we've got a couple more to do together. We're going to go ahead and move on though to the wire part of this for our center bead. Okay, so you want to wire wrap two more crystals and then move on up to the next. So another piece of 24 gauge wire coming in just like so. And then we're using our round nose pliers to go up and over, rotate, take the wire over. Don't do anything yet. Remember, we're ready to move on. So we want to thread a bicone on to that loop. We want to thread the rest of our earring onto that loop, and then our next bicone. Slide all of that into place with that loop facing towards us. Bent chain nose pliers coming in. You're going to hold, and then you're going to wire wrap. Cutter tool to trim off. You're ready to add your next bead and do the next wrapped loop with the loop facing away from you. Okay, so just double check your placement. Bend the wire. Round nose pliers are coming in, up and over the top barrel of the pliers. Rotate those in your hand. Take the wire over to the other side, wire wrap in that space. So I know we're making earrings with this. However, this is a great way to make a beaded chain for just about anything. You wanted to do a bracelet or you wanted to do a necklace, you can use these same steps. You can leave the dangles in between out or leave the dangles in if you want to. You can also add more beads. So if you wanted to do like a cha-cha style bracelet, instead of just adding single bicones on either side, you could do 2 or 3 bicones inside there. The loop is nice and big, so it's really going to accommodate probably up to 4 other loops with beads on them. So just take all of that into consideration, because these techniques can definitely be applied in different ways in whatever it is that you're going to be creating. All right, so now we are up here at the top of our earring, and things are a little bit different here at the top. So I want to show you, since we don't have a bead to jump up to, we're jumping up to the ear wire. We're going to actually attach everything to a jump ring. So a 4mm jump ring is going to go here in place of a wrapped loop on a bead, right? And the reason we're using a jump ring is because that top loop, remember up here, our top loops for each one of these beads in the core are all facing away from us. And so is the loop of our ear wire. It's facing away from us. So in order for everything to hang correctly, we use a jump ring to go right in between there to face towards us. That jump ring is going to hold that last bead that we just wire wrapped, and our 2 dangles and our ear wire. So we're going to do the 2 dangles, and we're going to bring in the jump ring, and these earrings are going to be done. So this was a pretty quick project, but I think the results are absolutely stunning. And that's what I love the most about jewelry making, is I love it when you've got stunning pieces of jewelry and the effort was not a whole lot. This is a great piece to practice with. And then once you get the hang of it, you'll be able to put these together really, really quickly. So the effort is not much, but the results are absolutely beautiful. All right, so I've got my jump ring here and my ear wire ready to go, my 2 head pins. And we're going to wire wrap these real quick. And then we'll put all of this together. All right, so same steps, last 2 times to practice this before I let you go. All right, we're grabbing the wire right where it is exiting the bead, and we're bending the wire over the top of the pliers, and let those pliers do the measuring for you. You're going to come in with your round nose pliers, grabbing that wire. You're going to go up and over the top barrel of the pliers, and then you're going to rotate those in your hand, making the bottom barrel the top barrel. Take the wire over to the other side to close up your loop, and you're going to wire wrap in that space that was created with the chain nose pliers. So you're just going to fill that space up with wire wraps. Don't push too many, because again, you don't want to crack the top of that bead, so be careful. But you're going to fill in that space, and then you're going to come in with your cutter tool and trim off the excess. Okay. And then one more. Same steps, chain nose pliers, bending the wire, bringing in the round nose pliers, up and over, rotate, take the wire over to the other side. Right, and then we're going to trim off the excess. Okay, now we're ready to put all this together, and it all ends with this little 4mm jump ring. It's got a really big job. So we're going to take this jump ring between 2 pairs of pliers, and with my dominant hand and the pliers that are in that dominant hand, I'm going to twist to open that. So it's like I'm walking it. It's actually kind of like a back step. I'm walking it open, and I'm going to thread on one of, my wrapped loops with the bicone, and then my earring, and then the other bicone. And then before I close that back, I'm going to go ahead and thread on my ear wire. I'm going to come back in with my other pair of pliers, grab that jump ring, again, and then twist to close it back. You want to be sure that you get a good closure on that, that it's nice and as seamless as you can possibly get it. Don't ever pull those jump rings apart, because you'll never get that round shape again when you try to force it back together. It's just not going to look the same. So that twisting motion is going to be the best way to open and close those jump rings and keep them seamless, and they'll stay nice and strong for you, so you don't have to worry about them breaking on you. And that's it, you guys. You've got a beautiful pair of shoulder duster earrings. And I know these are long, crazy sparkly earrings, but I'm thinking about holiday parties. I'm thinking about New Year's, thinking about things like that, where you definitely want a showstopper piece of jewelry, but with minimal effort. However, you can shorten these up. As I mentioned, you can leave the chain off, right? And just do 3 regular wrapped loops without the chain on the bottom. Add an ear wire here. Stop at the next stop up, add an ear wire. At the next stop, so you can really kind of adjust the length, or you can make these even longer if you want to. Turn it into a bracelet, turn it into a section of a necklace. Having 2 little sections like this as the length of a really long necklace, just to kind of give you an idea. So let's say this is the left side of your necklace and the right side of your necklace, and then you have some drapes. How pretty would that be? You've got all of the beautiful cha-cha of the crystals, and then some draped layered necklace pieces here in the front. So you can really take this whole simple design to a different level if you want to. So pretty. All right, I'm going to turn you guys around, and I'm going to show you what these look like on, because they're beautiful on, and gravity definitely has a lot to do with the way that these look. So let me turn you around. I hope that you guys have enjoyed today's project, and thanks for being so patient with us in the beginning today. I know we had some technical issues that definitely took away a little bit of our class time, but as you can see, this was a project that didn't take a whole lot of time. I'm really bad at doing this on camera. Apologize. I should probably just hold these up and be like, see, ta-da. But I think it helps to see them on if I can actually get them on. Oh my. All right, there we go. They're so pretty and they're so sparkly. It's a really, really cool pair of earrings. You can do these in multiple colors. You could do these in like clear crystals, and they could look like icicles. There's so many options. But I do love that bright red. It's kind of sassy. I like it. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me for today's project. I hope that you have enjoyed it, and I hope that I have inspired you to go work on your wrapped loops and your simple wire working, because those basics are the stepping stones to creating some really amazing pieces of jewelry that are right at your fingertips, right? All right, everybody. I will see you again very, very soon with another fun class. In the meantime, don't forget to post your projects so that everybody can see what you're doing, and be sure that you're checking out all of the other amazing classes that are available on the Michaels website. And don't forget, in about 24 hours, you can watch this on a replay, so you can get right to the techniques and see what it is that you need anytime you need it, as many times as you want. All right, guys, I will see you again soon. Have a great rest of your afternoon. Bye, guys.